Our first lecture focused on the psychology of communication and on communication methods and attitudes we can adopt to promote the most rational and respectful reasoning with others. This next lecture will focus on specific fallacies of thinking that often interfere with our ability to reason carefully and fairly. A fallacy is just a type of reasoning error that has been made often enough to be categorized and given a name. The fallacy of appeal to emotion is clear enough by its name. In ethical debate, it is easy to appeal to emotions such as fear, guilt, shame, pity, etc., instead of making a rational argument for our ethical position. Hence I might argue against the morality of cheating by trying to scare you into accepting my point of view if you want a good grade. I might also use guilt and shame by talking about how little I respect you for having that point of view, or telling you how much it hurt me that you would say such a thing. Friends and enemies alike try to persuade us using fear, guilt, shame, and other such emotions. They can be very effective, but they are not philosophical arguments for anything. A philosophical argument must focus on the issue itself and why it is right or wrong, not simply appeal to our prejudice, fear, or emotions. Another important fallacy, sometimes used in ethical discussions, is sometimes called the bandwagon fallacy or the appeal to consensus. In the bandwagon fallacy, we argue that something must be true because everybody already knows it is true. It may well turn out that everyone agrees that something is true because it is true. But the mere fact that everyone agrees does not itself prove that something is true. Regardless, it is not a philosophical argument if you say, you are wrong because everyone knows you are. A philosophical argument must give the reasons why you disagree, and not just state that you disagree, or that others disagree as well. It is also important to remember that things that everybody knows often turn out to be wrong. Think about things like the wide acceptance of slavery, or the wide condemnation of interracial marriage, or the common belief that the world was flat. Simple agreement is not the same as truth. The fallacy of hasty generalization can be a particularly hurtful fallacy, along with being a bad form of reasoning. Hasty generalization is when we infer to the identity of a group from too few cases of observation. A similar fallacy is where we say that a group in general is like this, therefore the individual must be too. If I meet a few rich and stingy Americans, it would still be incorrect and offensive to say that all Americans are stingy. Similarly, let's assume that our American culture is, in general, more individualistic than other cultures. It would still be wrong for me to say to you, of course you are individualistic, you are an American. At worst, this fallacy can lead to racial and ethnic stereotypes. At best, it is simply bad reasoning. We all know what ridicule and name-calling are, and we know that we are not supposed to treat others this way. But when we strongly disagree with someone, it is always a temptation. That is ridiculous, absurd, meaningless, ignorant. Notice that the previous sentence does not make any kind of argument at all, but it does attack and belittle you. These attacks have no place in the philosophical study of ethics. The point of using these words is to ridicule and to belittle others. If something is ridiculous or ignorant, then it will be easy for you to rationally and respectfully explain why you disagree with the argument, and there is no need to preface your comments with belittling designations that don't actually add to the argument itself. Even more obviously incorrect, though sometimes also a temptation, is the use of name-calling. I may vent my emotional resentment by calling you a silly liberal or a heartless conservative, but I have alienated you, and I have failed to make an argument. Here again, focus on the argument that the person actually gave. Try to really understand their reasons for their belief, and respectfully and rationally explain your reasons for agreeing or disagreeing. Guilt by association is a fallacy wherein we dismiss an argument because of irrelated associations of the topic or person making the argument. Apparently Hitler was a vegetarian, but that is not a good argument to be used against being a vegetarian. Arnold Schwarzenegger might not be a great actor, but we cannot dismiss hydrogen-fueled cars just because he endorsed them. A last fallacy I will discuss here is the straw man fallacy. We are guilty of the straw man fallacy when we intentionally or accidentally make a weaker argument in the place of a stronger argument that is actually being made. At UCLA, they used to burn a paper effigy of Tommy Trojan before we played USC in football. Obviously, it was easier to defeat a paper Tommy Trojan than the actual USC football team. In the same way, you might make a complex and nuanced argument for why you believe in God, and I might be tempted to replace your argument by saying, so you believe in God because you need a crutch. Similarly, someone might make a thoughtful argument for why they don't believe in God, and I might be tempted to replace their argument with, so you don't believe in God because you want to be selfish and live in sin. In each case, I have failed to address your actual argument and disrespectfully replaced it with a silly argument that I can easily defend. The truth is that it is harder to think of good reasons for positions that we disagree with. I oftentimes give papers that require a student to respond to the best arguments both for and against an ethical position. Frequently those papers have thoughtful and well-considered arguments for their position, but make short and insubstantial arguments against their position. This difficulty is another reason why it is important to use Rogers' method and make sure that we understand those who disagree with us before we respond to their position. We oftentimes actually need their help to understand why someone would hold a view that is different from our own.